Hello there. So we're changing the rear shock absorber on a 2005 Chrysler Grand Voyager, and hopefully it's going to be fairly straightforward. The rear shock absorbers are fairly straightforward to fix and replace. So what we'll do is we'll get in there, I'll show you what's involved. Fairly straightforward. At the rear wheel we can actually go underneath and you can see there's the shock absorber there. So typically on the rear shock absorbers you only need to drop the shock absorber off itself. You don't need to mess about with the spring or anything like that. Now on this one, on the Chrysler Grand Voyager, these are leaf springs. You can see the leaf spring there and the shock absorber. So let's get the wheel off, we'll get access and have a look and see how we get on. The first tricky bit you've got is where to jack it and how to jack it, because what I've done is, sorry for the sideways, we've got our jack stand up holding the chassis, and then what I've got is the trolley jack sat so we can compress and extend the shock absorber. So that should help us. So the wheel's off the ground, so let's get the wheel off and so we can get at the shock absorber itself and take a look at getting the two bolts out. Two bolts, and here we have it. We can now see the shock absorber that we're wanting to work on, and you can see we've got one bolt at the bottom, just pan across, one bolt at the top. Now I've already given it a good dosing of WD-40 onto each of them, because as you can see they're quite rusted. So the top one, it's a captive nut at the back, so you just undo the front. This one however isn't, it's a bolt and nut, so we need two sockets on that. So I'll get the tools now. That's starting to work its magic, the WD-40, and we'll get the shock absorber off. So as with most of these rusted on crusty bolts, it does take a bit of work. So we've got an 18. What I've done is I've got an 18 ring spanner at the back holding the nut in place, and the main problem you've got is if you can get the car higher, it's easier, because then you've got more leverage on your lever arm here. But just by slowly working at it and just very carefully going away at it, I've now got some movement on it, and you can see that's starting to undo. So we're good on that one. So now what we'll do is we'll move and we'll start the same job on this one. It's the same process, trying to get the angle right so that you can get in. Might need to use an extension piece to get out and give us the most leverage on it. Now we've got both of these loosened. Next thing we want to do is we want the shock absorber extended as far as possible, because we don't want any pressure on it whilst we undo the bolts. So what we're going to do is I'm going to drop the trolley jack, which is going to allow the whole of the hub and the wheel to drop down as far as possible on this side. That'll give us the most extension on the shock absorber and reduce as much of the tension and the pressure off it as possible. So we'll do that now. you may be thinking, Andy, what on earth are you now doing? Well, this is where necessity calls for a little bit of a bodging trick. So the thing is, I've only got one trolley jack, and at the minute it's stuck underneath because we've dropped as far as we can. Now ideally we need to go a little bit lower, but because of the working space that I've got, this is all I've got. So what's the trick? So the idea is we're using a lever to lift a little bit of pressure off the bolt, which will allow me to take the bolt out. As you can see, I've got the nut off the other side, so we're just taking a little bit of pressure off, and this is basically because the shock absorber hasn't fully extended, so there is a little bit of pressure still on it. So this is just giving me a little bit of leverage onto the base of the shock absorber so that I can pull the nut out, and then the shock absorber will fully extend and drop. So I'll continue and give that a go now. Right, it's got a little bit windy here, but hopefully you can still hear me alright. So here we go, we've taken the shocker out, and you'll see one of the reasons why I'm replacing it. As you can see, top rubber bush, the mount has completely given up. Now you can change those. You can obviously push the old one out, and you can push the new one in. You need a vise or a clamp or something to force the new one in. It's quite tricky, but it is doable. I've seen it done on a bench vise before. It's just a bit of hard work to do. Now in my case, the shock has also been leaking. You can't see it on here, but I've got some leaks going down the side of it, and as you can see, it's also a bit rusted. So what I'm going to do is I'm replacing the whole thing. I'm replacing both sides on mine. Actually, you can see a little bit of the leak there. That's oil. That's not the WD-40. But what you'll find if I clean this up now, then let's just get the camera so you can see it. I'll put all of this in the comments. Now, these are made by Sachs, and they are specialist, believe it or not. They are called self-leveling shock absorbers. Now, self-leveling shock absorbers don't act like a regular shock absorber. So if I try and push down on it, you'll see it doesn't compress like a normal shock absorber. It needs a lot of force to do it. So a normal shock would compress. And the reason being
is that these self-level. The idea is that when you've got a lot of weight in the back of the car won't suddenly just drop right the way down on the springs and sit at the bottom. It'll actually try and maintain its height. Now, in this car, the Chrysler Grand Voyager, these are patented by Mopar, who are the parts manufacturer for Chrysler, and unfortunately a pair of shocks for this car are around about £700 or £800. Now, I don't really want to pay out that kind of money for a couple of rear shock absorbers, so what I'm doing is I'm replacing them with standard non-leveling shock absorbers. Now, there's two problems here. First of all, potentially this may reduce the lifespan of the new shock absorbers. Only time will tell with that. Do pop a comment down below if you think otherwise, or if you want to put any comment on that. But also, the shock absorbers I'm putting on, they are slightly shorter in length. So what that means is that at full extent they won't go down as far. Now, again, whether that will cause a problem for me in the long run, I'm not sure. So it's a little bit of an experiment. Please do pop comments down the bottom, give me a thumbs up, and please remember to subscribe to my videos for more of this. I will give you an update a little bit further along the line, and we'll see how these new shock absorbers get along, because as you'll see when I'm fitting them, they are very different. They're a lot smaller in diameter, and that's mainly because of the self-leveling component. The self-levelers have quite a big structure to them. So let's get the new shock absorber in place, and we'll start to put it back on the car. Just to show you that things don't always go to plan for me. You may have heard a thump there when I was trying to lift the jack to lift the wheel up a little bit further, and the jack caved to one side. We can have a little look, and you can see what's happened. The pin that holds the jack together has dropped through, so it looks like I need to get a new retaining clip for the end. It's not very easy to see because we've got some sunshine here, but so there's another job for the future. Little retaining clip on there to get the jack back up and working. It's not always easy, this job, is it? No. Right, anyway, we're on to Mark B. Remember, we are still using the jack stand, by the way. The jack stand is still taking the weight of the vehicle, so don't panic. That's just holding this up so we can try and get the shock in place. So let's get back on with it, and hopefully no more problems. And there we have it. New shock absorber fitted on the rear, and that should keep us going quite a bit longer. I've tightened both of them up. I've put them in place, snugged them up, and then tightened them both equally, so it should be all okay there. and like I say, we'll see how we get on with it. It is a little bit of an experiment, this, because as you can see they are slightly different, so watch out, because I'll come back and we'll review this a little bit later on, see how the shock absorbers are getting on. But please remember, do subscribe to the channel so you can see more about what I'm up to. Subscribers everything to me, so please hit the subscribe button down that side, and if you enjoyed the video, also press the like button somewhere down there, and the comments are down there. You can tell me what I've done wrong, why you don't think this will work, or if you're going to keep an eye on this, put it down there, and then at least you'll know when I do an update. And all of the parts and things like that I'll put in the description bit as well, so you know what to go out and buy for this. So I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.